We have got a great panel today. This is pretty amazing. It truly is an all-star lineup. So let me just introduce everybody. First of all, the owner of one of the state's largest privately held commercial real estate companies, Michael Pollack, President and CEO of Michael A. Pollack Real Estate Investments. He's owned over 11 million square feet of retail projects with a value well in excess of $1 billion. In fact, if you drive down the street anywhere and you see a strip center, he most likely owns it. So Michael, why don't you wave for a second here? Okay, and then Alan Jones, Division President of Lennar, which is the nation's largest home builder, building new homes in 21 states and more than 77 popular real estate markets across the country. Alan's just a wonderful leader in the real estate community, and he has been for such a long time. People trust Alan's judgment, and Alan is an innovator in home building, and so we really appreciate you coming on today with us. As if that wasn't enough, Dr. Anna Moran, she's the Clinical Associate Professor of Infectious Disease at Barrow Neurological Institute, Director of Infection Control Program, and the Medical Director at a company that Court and I started a couple of months ago now at Healthy Verify Certification, which is focused on getting people back to work in America. And thank you, Doctor, for everything you're doing, and God bless you for being on the front lines. And finally, but not least, is our law partner, Cameron Carter. He's the director of our transactional law department and does amazing work for, well, lots of you on the call and certainly the folks on the panel. So thanks, Cameron, for your leadership. And then my other partner, Court Rich. Court is the co-moderator. So we're very excited to have all of you today. Okay, so let's get it going. And I wanted to start, maybe Alan, I know you've always reacted to chaos in such innovative ways. And we can see that in the past in your leadership of the company and other companies. Can you talk to us a little bit about, first of all, how the chaos has affected your model home traffic and your sales? Has it slowed, and how has that ebb and flow been for the last 8 weeks or so?
It's a great question. Had some pretty exciting things happen when this transpired, and if you look at our sales in the month of March, we had 220 sales. And so we were feeling really good about what was going on in the marketplace. And then, you know, this whole thing hit. And one of the fascinating things about Lennar, it's probably one of the smallest big companies as far as the thought process of any company I've ever been associated with. But what we've done in the last month throughout our whole entire company is we've gone through a process of putting in place a new lock in all of our models. So in Phoenix, we've got 76 homes that now have a new lock. If you go on our website today, you can arrange for a, quote, self-guided tour. And how that works, Jordan, is if you go online, you can say, hey, I want to do a self-guided tour tomorrow at 10 o'clock. You will be able to come to our Welcome Home Center if you'll give us you got to give us your phone number, and you got to give us your email, and you got to be have a license, okay, and then take a selfie. And if you do that, you can come to our Welcome Home Center by yourself. And when you get close to the Welcome Home Center through geofencing, we'll send you a combination to that lock. And for a half an hour, that home is yours. And it's a fascinating thing that happens because now people can come to our Welcome Home Center and never talk to anyone. And for some people, that's great, okay? And so as a result of that, and then also the virtual sales that we've had our new home consultants be able to generate, in the last month, 20 of our sales came from virtual sales and from what we call our, quote, self-guided tours. And a month ago, we didn't have any of those, but in the last month, we've had 20. And so we've been somewhat fortunate, but maybe a little bit forward thinking and reactive to the situation. So we ended up generating 160 sales in the month of April. And I got to tell you, that's pretty exciting to us, given, you know, the challenges that are out there, to be able to still have that kind of an activity level. Because if you annualize that, it would still be, you know, 1,900 cells for the year. So crazy time, and a challenging time, but also an opportunity for us to figure out new and innovative ways to make it happen.
That's awesome. Congratulations, Alan. Quick question on the lock situation. So if I give you my email, my phone number, I make an appointment, I get my geofence, they send me the combination, I walk in the house. Is your sales force anywhere to be seen, or your sales force isn't even there? You're by yourself in your house?
The new home consultant will be in the Welcome Home Center, but you will actually be able to go through the model by yourself. They will not contact, they'll text you and say, hey, do you need any help? But if you don't want any help, if you don't want to see anyone, if you don't want to talk to anyone, you don't have to. And a lot of the folks will, after they go through and look at it, will say, hey, you know, I got a couple of questions or whatever. But if you want to, you can do this by yourself and never talk to us.
That's awesome. Well, this is from a guy who built the house in the IKEA parking lot, and that was innovation. So it's pretty not surprising that you're figuring out cool things to do. Michael, let me ask you a question. So during this chaos, right at the very beginning, when I think everyone was kind of in the holy, you know, crap situation, where like, what are we going to do? What's the business going to do? Whatever. I'm reading my morning Arizona Republic, and there is a full page ad, and this went on for like 5 or 6 days, where you're just telling small businesses how to get help, and you decided that at that point in time people needed help, and you were going to take out ads in the Republic to help them. Just give us that thought process, because that's pretty amazing. I was inspired by it.
Well, thank you, Jordan. So,
yeah,
you know, when I first looked at this and I said, okay, this is not going to be an easy time, and you know, I'm a 47-year veteran in the real estate business. I know I don't look that old. I'm actually only about 50 years old, but you know, I was 47 years, and I said, what would we do at a time like this? And what we do? Got the playbook out, dusted it off, thought about 2009. Not that I wanted to, but I knew I'd have to. And then I thought, okay, this time the federal government is actually offering a lifeboat. They're actually offering a life raft. And so I wanted to make sure that we were able to get that word out, not just to my tenants, but I wanted to get it out to small businesses across the entire cities. And I want them to understand that there is some hope. Now, I will say this, the first go around, and I've got about maybe in excess of 1,500 tenants. So I've got a few of them. And I will say that the first go around, it was very, very difficult, because getting the money from the PPP program, first go around, we probably had 6, 7, 8 people out of maybe 400, 500, 600 that applied. So it was discouraging. But then I will say, this time around, the second time, it has been amazing. The amount of our tenants that have called me and said, you know, Michael, we are wanting to pay. Can we bring it by your office? We know we're late. Can we bring it by? And it's like, well, yeah, I guess so. And you know, when you hear something, or the thank yous for helping them to navigate through what wasn't the simplest of procedures. And then we actually brought somebody in who worked with the SBA for 25 years in order to help advise me and in order to help advise my tenants on how to try to get this PPP program. And so I thought it was really, really important. And, you know, when the government was willing to offer something, the people just had to know how to be able to take it. And so I'm really glad that we were able to get started in that direction. And today, by the way, was a great day, because as I was coming down that street, I saw cars again. And I like to see that.
Amen. Amen. Thanks, Michael. Well, that's wonderful. Dr. Moran, let me ask you about the new company, Healthy Verify certification. You're the medical director there. What are you seeing? How has that been? What is it doing? Just give us a little background on it.
Yeah, so Healthy Verify, as you probably all know, will provide services to help minimize the risk and maximize the safety of employers and customers of different type of businesses, starting from the standards given by White House, CDC, WHO, American Enterprise Institute, etc., and leveling it up or taking it up to higher standards. I particularly I have experience on infection control as it applies to healthcare settings, and as you might imagine, that's the highest standards that industries might require. And so I apply the level of safety from that we use in the hospitals and apply it to different businesses based on or using the platform of the regulatory agencies and adapting it to the different flows of the businesses. And that has been quite a challenge because every business is different. And even within the different businesses, their operations may be different depending on the departments, et cetera. And so we look at the flow, we look at the number of people, the different hours, the flow of customers also, of course, and also the feasibility of the recommendations we do. And so we go back and forth through Healthy Verify. I review it, and typically we do an inspection either on site or virtually. And of course, this process will require constant revision because, as you know already, the recommendations change sometimes by the day, depending on how scientific knowledge is acquired, and it changes with the new with the results of new studies. So my role, like I said, is looking at it from the infection control standpoint to provide safety of the highest possible level applied to each business.
Thank you. And so the goal is just to allow for some certainty and for the public to understand that this place of business is trying to do their best to control infection. So thank you, doctor. I appreciate that. Cameron, you've been closing what are the challenges of closing transactions in this environment, or have they just completely stopped, or how's that? We've got a lot of real estate folks on the Zoom today.
Sure, thanks, Jordan. You know, there are deals closing. Everybody should know that. And there's loans closing. You know, people are out there doing business. It seems like to me that, you know, there have certainly been deals, you know, a few deals drop, but most parties are, you know, adding additional time. They're extending feasibility if they were in feasibility, just trying to get more data and a little bit more certainty. You know, eliminate the unknowns so that they can make good business decisions on how to go forward. But there are deals that are closing there. And, you know, I think what we've heard from Alan and from Michael, you know, people are innovating, and, you know, we're several weeks into this now, and, you know, Healthy Verify is a great example of that. People are figuring out, you know, new ways to do business. You know, just recently this week on our lease, you know, working out you know, some lease changes for a landlord and tenant, trying to figure out, okay, what's that going to look like? What's that relationship going to look like going forward? You know, we had a tenant that came back. They had previously asked for some concessions and, you know, thought that they weren't going to be able to open back up for a few months because summer's their slow period. And they were saying, you know, why would we do this anyways? You know, and they came back this week and said, you know what? We've rethought this. We've got another concept. We've got ideas, and, you know, we want to open up here in the next few weeks, and we don't need as much as we thought we needed. And, you know, let's get this back open and back on track. And so I just think it's amazing. And, you know, kudos to Alan and Michael and everybody, you know, that's innovating and, you know, using the time here to think hard about how they do business. And, you know, it's awesome to see.
It is awesome to see. It is awesome to see. Alan, talk to us about land purchasing. Are you buying land? Are you reducing your inventory? And if you stopped buying land, when do you anticipate starting again, or what does that look like?
It's a great question. And let me start by also telling you that when this first happened, you know, our focus, like everybody else, would be on cash, right? And how do we make sure we got sufficient cash? And so let's see how many homes we can get closed and what's going to happen there. And so that was the first and foremost focus for us. And so we did pause a number of our communities, but because of our continued success in selling, we've actually been able to have 14 communities that are no longer paused. And wow, that is, you talk about having your new home consultants get excited and just the whole team feel like, hey, you know what? We're gonna go out and we're gonna make this happen. That was such a positive message to be able to send to our, to our team that, hey, you know what? We're closing homes, and a home purchase is a long-term experience. I mean, you're buying a home and you're going to be there for a long time. What we're experiencing today is a short-term event. So we need to focus on the fact that you still need a home and you're going to be here for a long time. And so that's been our focus. And then the other thing to answer is that as far as acquisitions, I mean, the thing that we have done, like pretty much everybody else, who said, hey, look, we need to get some clarity here. We need you to work with us a little bit. We're not going anywhere. We're having success, but just work with us a little bit. And our intent is to, within the next short period of time, be able to understand where we're at and be able to start closing homes like we have, and then also be able to start closing on acquisitions and looking for additional deals. And so the good news is that, we're expecting to be able to close over 200 homes this month. If that happens, then, we're going to look to start acquiring again.
What percentage of buyers that were under contract were canceling, or is that not an issue anymore?
No, it's a great question. And I'll answer it exactly. Our cancellation rate was in the 13 to 14% before this. It's gone up about 10%. And, the thing that we've seen is that, we're definitely having a number of people that we're working with that are furloughed. And so the sooner we're able to have things open back up and people be able to go back to work, we're going to have those people be able to buy. The thing that we're trying to do is, if people are serious and wanting to buy their home, we're trying to work with them and giving them a little bit of extra time. And so trying to work with people.
Hey, Alan, I'm wondering if I could just jump in really quick. The innovations you were talking about before with the self-guided tour and stuff, do you guys view that and other stuff you're doing as a long-term, innovation that's going to stick around, or is it, in your view, temporary until we're done with, to the extent we ever are done with whatever's going on right now?
Oh, I love that question, because that's a conversation that we're having consistently, and what we are hoping for. And we're going to try to figure out if we can actually go to an appointment only environment in some of our communities. If we can make that work, we're going to expand it, because what we'd really love to do, let me just give you an interesting percentage. 5% of the people or less that come into a Welcome Home Center buy. Okay. So it's a very low percentage, but the number of people that buy, that come there by appointment, goes up to between 15 and 20%. And so if we can set up a situation where people have gone online, they've set an appointment, they've come out knowing what it is that they're looking for, our percentage of those people that buy is much more significant. So we're really anxious to see if we can't figure out how to convert our process, which it's completely different. I mean, it's a whole new way of doing business that we haven't done before, to an appointment only business. Man, it's exciting to us, because then we're working with people that are much more serious and much more ready to buy.
Thanks, Alan. Thank you. That's great. Okay, Michael, I wanted to ask you about how this compares to various downturns that you have lived through as a commercial landlord, and what your thought process is on this one compared to others. And I also wanted to note that, yes, indeed, that drinking game, I hear there is a drinking game going on, and I've been texted, it has to do with hand waving. So Court, you were right. That's what it has to do with. so in the audience, so that's not good.
All right. Well, I'm not sure about the drinking game, but it sounds all right to me. It's a little early for drinks, but the one thing I love the one thing I love about these lunches is, no matter what I dream I'm eating, because this is all virtual, I don't gain any weight, so it's really kind of nice. But that being said, so You know, I remember some of people do, maybe a lot don't, but I remember in 1979 when interest rates were at 18% for single family homes back when I was building them. That was a little bit of a catastrophe. And I remember back in 1989 when the RTC basically took over the whole world, and that was a difficult time. I remember, of course, 1999 when we had a little issues with .com, and I remember 2009, which I'll never forget as long as I live. And every time I talk with people and I give a speech, and they always want to know, how'd you make it through 2009? And I told them, I played a lot of the drinking games. No. The truth is antidepressants. No. The real truth is we worked 7 days a week, and I still work now. Again, at my age, I didn't think I was going to be doing it, but now we're in again, I don't know what it is about nines. Something about nines and me, we just don't get along. And this is, of course, the COVID-19. I should have known, because I kept telling everybody all year in 2019, this thing is too good to be true. I mean, we were on track in 2019. It was truly, and again, out of 47 years, it was our best year ever, 2019. And, you know, a lot of our tenants also had great years in 2017, 18, 19, even January, February of this year. We had people paying early. We had people, thank goodness, back in 2019 in December, wanting to pay their rent 3-4 months in advance. So, you know, it was shaping up to be an economy that was absolutely unbelievable. 2009, that's the one that most people can still remember. 1979, is there anybody that remembers 1979 other than me? Just me?
Raise your hand.
All right, just me.
Yeah, you got a bunch of them.
All right, so that was a bad year, but 2009, most of us remember that, especially we're in business, and if you were in real estate and you were based in Arizona in the year 2009, people would send me get well cards even when I wasn't sick. So it was a tough time, but it was different. What was different about it was in 2009 is we had a situation that was the perfect storm. We had interest rates that were really not as low as they needed to be. We had an overabundance of product. We had liar loans, I called them LLs, and they were running rabid. And, you know, it was a perfect storm, unfortunately. And the storm came and it hit us all. And it was totally different, I think, than what we're seeing now. What we have right now, I mean, it's as if the world dropped off. And when you first opened, Jordan, and you mentioned, it's only been less than a couple of months. Well, where I sit, it seems like it's been a couple of years, although I know it's only been a couple of months. So it's different in that we've got an enemy that we can't really see, unfortunately, which is this virus. I can tell you right now that if there was one of three things, and I keep saying this because it's true, and I recognize it's wishful thinking, but one of three things: we need a successful cure, we need a vaccine, or we need to know that there's a treatment that'll actually work. And if we get one of those three things, the retail market is going to go crazy. Now, when I say that, look, there's companies right now, and let's just call it the way it is, folks. I was reading today's paper, and so there is somebody that still reads the paper, by the way, and it's me. So I was reading the paper, and it was Neiman Marcus, I believe. $5 billion in debt, people, for a department store, a specialty department store. Now, you want to tell me that the COVID virus took them out, or the coronavirus? No, 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 no. People that were well capitalized went into this mess, this pandemic, this horrific situation. They're still surviving, but you know, thank goodness here in Arizona, we've got a governor that is hip to business. And when he used to say all the time, we want people to know Arizona is open for business, he's doing just that. And he's doing it in a way that he's trying to be as safe as humanly possible from what I've been reading and seeing and hearing. And so, you know, California now, we could talk about that. I don't know if any of you from California, but I'll tell you what, it's pretty bad over there as far as the way they're treating the businesses. And there's a lot of businesses. So anybody that's looking to rent space or industrial, there's quite a few folks right now in California aren't too thrilled with it. And I have a lot of projects in California, and I can tell you, the way that California is handling this whole situation is wrong. It's extremely wrong. And it starts from the top. The governor hasn't done it properly in California. unlike what our governor, Governor Ducey, is doing here. So the main difference is this could be over just as quick as it started. Am I an optimist? Am I an optimist? Well, not really. Am I a pessimist? Not really. I'm a realist. So I think that what we have to do is we have to try to make sure that the businesses that open safely, stay safe, and that they are careful, because you know what? We can't keep the economy closed down forever. Otherwise, we'll have issues that we've never seen since the 1920s. We're not going to have that. So really what we need to do is we need retailers, we need restaurants, we need all the hair salons to be overly careful. They have to be so careful right now so that people don't get another whole situation that's going to exist. So I think this time around, and by the way, the other thing I'll tell you about retail tenants right now, most of them did have reserves. And I'm going to tell you another thing. We haven't had, and this is unusual, because in the other problematic times that we've had, in issues like 2009, we used to get what was called jingle mail. And it's not because it was Christmas time. Jingle mail means they send the keys in the mail. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, it's been, again, it seems like years, but it's been 2 months. And I'm going to tell you, I haven't gotten a single jingle mail. And I'm also going to tell you, I haven't had, and thank the good Lord, so maybe prayer has something to do with this one this time, I don't know. But no, thank the good Lord, we haven't had one person yet that called me up out of over 1,500 tenants, including California, and said, Michael, we're throwing in the towel, come get the keys. I haven't had one of those. Am I going to tell you that we haven't had some sick patients that we had to work with? Yeah, of course we did. But we know the difference. We've been doing this long enough. I know when the time is to actually help somebody, and I know when the time that I'm getting scammed. And that's the key. You know, right now it's a market for professionals. Unfortunately, rookies and amateurs, they need to listen to other people right now that have already been through it. I know, Jordan, your firm was through the 2009 mess. So firms like yours, you know, they're great to give guidance. In 2009, it had been so long since anybody in the legal world had seen a real problem, because the last big one was in 1989, you know, which was the RTC days. So there was so many attorneys out there that were like, well, we don't know what to do. What's a workout? I mean, what do you mean workout? And, you know, today there's experienced people just like you, Jordan, and Cameron and your team. You know what you're supposed to do. And by the way, the lenders this time around, I can tell you, personally, I'm not late on a single payment, and I don't plan on asking for anything from my lenders. And I didn't ask, by the way, in 2009. I never asked for one thing from a lender. No, nobody. I paid all my bills when they were due. But that doesn't mean that this time around it's not going to be difficult. And it doesn't mean that lenders shouldn't help, because they should. And if they don't help, by the way, you're talking about 60% of landlords could have real issues. So there's a lot of, I could go on forever, but I know there's other people who want to talk. So I'll yield the computer screen.
Thanks, Michael. I got a question for Dr. Moran. I know, look, on our, on your Facebook feed or wherever you're getting your news, you hear so many, somebody says one thing, somebody else says another. Are there things that you're hearing out there that are just, just not the right advice, things that people are being told to do, or there seems to be some conventional wisdom that folks are following that just isn't right, or is misleading in some way?
Can I follow up on that before you even start to answer, Doctor? And also tell us, like, is there some advice that you would just overall give to everyone?
Yes, well, the first advice is don't get your information about COVID from Facebook or any social media. There's very nicely or well put together sources like the Johns Hopkins CDC also, though it's a little general, but Johns Hopkins, Harvard, UC, San Francisco have really, really nice sources of information. Perhaps one concept that hasn't been as widespread discussed and it has a lot of coming and going and confusing information is the mask issue and the asymptomatic transmission of the virus. And you will notice that in most of my reviews, I put a lot of emphasis on that. Way back 2 months ago, and I will actually agree with Mr. Pollack, it's been 2 months, maybe a little less than 2 months in Arizona, and it feels like 2 years, both in the hospital and in the community. There has been a lot of misinformation, and it's hard to educate people when science changes every week and sometimes within days, because this is absolutely a new organism that we're still far from knowing completely. And so mask is something, an asymptomatic transmission, I should say, is a topic that is very important, and it seems to be the Achilles tendon of controlling the spread of the disease in the community, which in turn has a very high importance in terms of opening up the economy again. We would not want to carefully open up the community or the economy, I'm sorry, and businesses, and see that there is another resurgence of cases that will put us back to mid-March. So we want to, again, do it carefully, slowly, so we can get there faster. And through well thought through.
Zoom meeting right now.
Hello. Anyway, so to me, a very important part would be the part of controlling asymptomatic transmission.
Great, thank you. Alan, everyone on this call, on our panel here, you're all leaders in your industries, in your companies. And I'm wondering, there's been a lot of controversy about, is Arizona doing the right thing? Are we doing the wrong thing? If you were in charge for a day and could make the call, are there things that you would do differently going forward dealing with this situation? Or do you feel like, the right moves have been made in our state?
Let's ask everybody that. But Alan, go first. How's that? Okay.
Good.
Well, I do want to say this. I am so appreciative of the governor that we have and the fact that he has been pro-business and supportive. I mean, I feel very fortunate. We happen to be in an essential business. And wow, I look around me and I realize that, we're incredibly fortunate. And one of the things that we've done is we've tried very hard to make sure that our associates and our trade associates are safe. And we've actually even hired a person that their sole responsibility out of the community is to make sure that those that are interacting with each other are remaining safe. So, what's interesting and what's fascinating about this is that if we can go about it safely, we're gonna succeed. I don't have all the answers. I mean, this is something that we've never dealt with before. I would say this, it's so far so good. I'm supportive of what's happened. I want to see us continue to open up more, but I think it needs to be a situation where we start, and if the those that are business owners handle it correctly, then we continue. And if we don't handle it correctly, then we have to be able to adjust. And so I want to see us continue to open up, but I want to see us do it slowly and carefully, because we're headed in the right direction and things are getting better. But let's not just say, okay, let's go back to the way it was. I can tell you right now, just real quick, we had 60 to 70 associates on a daily basis that would come to our office and work, okay? What fascinates me is that within a very short period of time, we went from having 6 to 8 associates that would come to work in our office, and we're still succeeding. We're still buying, selling, and closing homes. So it's fascinating to me that people can, as a whole, work from home. Now we got to figure out how we interact at the restaurants and how we interact in the supermarkets better, and how we interact at, a movie theater. Wow. There's some fascinating things that I don't have all the answers to, but I know that we can figure it out if we're patient and we work together in this process.
Doctor, I'm going to go to Michael afterwards, but Dr. Moran, there's a question. Are you recommending that everyone wear a mask in public places? And maybe also just talk about, are you happy that the restaurants are opening Monday? I mean, from an infectious disease perspective, not from a you get to go out to a restaurant perspective.
Yes, so the recommendation is that everyone who is in a public space, especially an area where it's hard to keep social distancing, the 6 feet recommendation, should cover their faces, nose and mouth, and it could be with any kind of mask, including cloth masks or face covers. Again, it's very important, especially if we want to continue the nice progress that I think if we do it in an under control way, it'll be successful and we'll be able to continue moving on and progressing into more businesses opening. Regarding, so the second question was,
let's ask the
Happy
same
to go to a
question.
restaurant?
oh yes, oh of course.
You think that's a good move?
Depends. So the answer, there's no straightforward. Well, as a customer, of course, although now I'm doing takeout, it depends on how it's done. We cannot open at full capacity right now, even though I will agree with Mr. Jones. I think the governor, from my standpoint of infectious diseases and infection control, I've seen that he very early aggressively took on the stay-at-home orders, closure of schools. I think that has been the reason why Arizona is not a hot spot. And not only that, but if you look at the number, so the percent of people who are positive among all those people who are being tested, it's between 7 and 9%. Under WHO principles, that means that we are actually testing enough people. So that is really a good thing. We didn't start that way at the very beginning, but of course, testing has ramped up in Arizona. So that helps a lot for the future, for opening up businesses, because part of the going back to as close to possible as to normal includes not only preventing asymptomatic spread, but also being able to detect cases so we prevent further transmission.
Thank you.
So,
Michael, thank you, Doctor. Michael, talk to us about what do you think we should be doing that we're not doing, or how?
Yeah, if you're king for a day, what are you changing, if anything?
Wow. Now, first of all, I have to admit, I wouldn't want to be the president of the United States right now, contrary to popular belief. I know you're thinking with the hairstyle, maybe I should have been. I don't want to be the president. I don't even want to be the governor right now, because the truth is, I don't envy their jobs. They have a very, very difficult job. Half the people are going to say you should do this, and the other half are going to say that. And then the bad part about all of it is, everybody wants to be that Monday morning quarterback. And if they're right, they'll get no credit. And if they're wrong, well, then everybody will want to blame them. And the truth is, they have to do what medical advisors tell them right now, as far as this pandemic is concerned, as far as this disease is concerned. The only thing I can honestly say, because I think the doctor did a wonderful job of addressing the things that I think a doctor should address. And I'm not an expert at that, but what I am an expert at is the fact that I can, luckily for me, I can see and I can hear. And what I see and what I hear, for example, in New York, New Jersey, the amount of cases that ended up coming down with the virus and the amount of deaths that have taken place there, why hasn't anybody said, well, gee, when you put hundreds, if not thousands, if not millions of people in a very tiny little car, a very tiny little train, and you run them around all day long, why wouldn't that have been a major factor for spreading this disease so quickly into the whole area there in New York and New Jersey? How do you possibly keep that clean, and how do you have social distancing? So I think that was very irresponsible. And I think that when I see them sometimes on the news and they're talking about what responsibility should and shouldn't be, well, they should have jumped on that a long time ago and realized there's no way to really do that. So I think that we have to be really careful about how we bring things back. I think that, when there's outdoor events, for example, if you can do them where you have spacing, then my humble opinion would be, for whatever it's worth, and the doctor, I'm sure, could put more light on it, you're probably better off than you would be indoors. And I mean, for example, for me, I don't know if I'd ever be able to ride a subway in New York City again, because I'd be extremely concerned. And there's no way to keep it clean. So I don't know why that hasn't been a bigger factor, and I don't know why people aren't talking about it. But you know what? If I could be king for a day, which is what you asked me, I would make sure that it's understood that we have to do things as a society. Our elected officials have to make these tough decisions. And when they make these tough decisions, they have to include sometimes things that they really don't want to have to say. Like, you know, we do have a problem there and we don't know the answer right now. And we need to come up with an answer. And it's not a fix-all or a catch-all. And so I think that if I could really do that, that's the word I would get out there. Absolutely, positively, because I don't want to see any more people have to cry.
Thanks. Hey, thank you all for that. Alan, quick question on contracts with deposits that were canceled. Are you returning the deposits? Just a question from a couple people privately messaged me on that too.
Yeah, what's happened is that we've treated the situation today the same as we always have. If somebody is just trying to get out of a contract, then we're going to abide by the contract. If somebody has a situation where they can no longer qualify for the loan, that's a different situation. But if somebody's just trying to get out of a contract, Jordan, we need to honor contract.
Thanks. Cameron, I'm going to ask Michael and Alan about opportunities in a second, so think through that. But Cameron, quick question, what mistakes, I mean, you lived through the last downturn and you were advising clients then. Now you've got experience on that. What kind of mistakes are avoidable, or what should people give us 2 minutes of things?
Sure, thanks, Jordan. I think the biggest thing is, and I've seen this, I saw people get burned in the last downturn, and I'm already seeing it a little bit here as well. Just not getting anything in writing. I think, one difference, and Michael, pointed to this before, that, landlords, lenders, anybody who went through that downturn has been really proactive over the last 8 weeks or so, in trying to get ahead of issues, trying to talk to tenants and landlords and, buyers, sellers, talk to lenders, get clarity and be proactive about what the situation is, what needs to get done. We're all experienced professionals. But I'm already seeing, people agree to concessions on deals or, grant more time and not putting those in writing. And that only leads to, misunderstandings in the future down the road or already, we say, well, we're going to pay less rent now. We're going to pay it differently than we paid before. We're going to, lower that. We're going to agree to, concessions on interest rates or something like that. If it's not documented in writing, the agreement doesn't exist. The change doesn't exist. And so people just need to, not make that mistake of, making verbal agreements and then trying to live by those later. Get it in writing now.
Good advice, Cameron. Thank you. Doctor, I got to ask you, because there's some folks on here that are looking pretty shaggy, as in they need a haircut. I'm not including myself because mine never looks any different even after I get a cut. What should we do in that interaction with the stylist? Like, what are we wearing? Full face body covers, or what? How are we gonna do that safely?
Mask in the stylist and masks in the customer. And then I would eliminate waiting rooms where in general, it's hard to keep social distancing in waiting rooms. Even us as doctors have eliminated waiting rooms whenever possible. If possible, have your client wait in the car, and again, one-on-one. In specific advice, we don't have the time to do right now, but it's hard to do depending on what the haircut is. If it's a guy's haircut that takes 20 minutes, you can have one-on-one clients. If it's a girl's, hair coloring and whatnot, it may take an hour or two. It's hard to keep a one-on-one, but essentially keep the minimum in-person, mask on client and mask on stylist, and no waiting rooms. That would be my 2 cents.
Should we force it to go outside and do it in the 105-degree temperature too?
No, they can wait in the car. No.
No, okay, thank you. Michael, before we get to opportunity, I gotta ask you, the theater, your theater, it's great theater. What's your plan with that, or do you have one, or what do you anticipate?
So Jordan, the theater that we've had it for more than 20 years. It was getting ready to close when we bought the shopping center. So we took over the theater. It was either that or invent a new game called downhill bowling because of the slope floors, you know. So we've kept it open. We're in a little bit of a unique situation, not necessarily in a good one, but you know, we've known that for many years. We are a second run, and we're one of the last of the second runs. I think there's only one other left in the whole valley. I'm not even sure if they're left anymore. So we're a little bit dependent on the content that we can get. And for example, the first runs haven't seen content in, my God, they haven't seen it in a couple of 3 months. So they're going to get it first. And, you know, if they don't get enough content, then we won't be able to open at the same time as them because we have to wait for them to go through some of that. So it's like a chain effect. It has to move, the train rather has to move a little bit at a time. So for us, we're working on plans, we're working on safety plans, but we don't really have an opening schedule. I wish we did. If somebody could tell me how much content we're gonna get, but a lot of the major studios, I'm gonna tell you, a lot of the major studios right now, they're holding off on movies because they recognize that, you know, they aren't gonna have as many people because somebody opens the magic floodgates and says, okay, you can all go back to the movies now. That doesn't mean that everybody's going to go back to the movies the same day that it happens. And, you know, the one thing I didn't answer before, but I felt bad that I didn't. One thing that's really different this time than last time, and everybody should really think about this, because when we talk about the economy, and we talk about people might lose houses and all the other things we've talked about, if you remember what unemployment was, the people were getting the actual dollar amounts. They were in the hundreds of dollars, but very low hundreds back in 2009. Keep in mind, when you look at today, and people have to remember this, this is why right now, my opinion is this could be much better financially than what happened before. And that's because they're getting the $600 federal plus the $200 and something state. So you're talking about people are getting up to $3,300 a month, folks, for unemployment, where they were getting last time around, I think it was 800, maybe it was 9, but that's the difference, especially if there's two people, if there's a husband and wife working, then that's the difference between them being able to come over to Allen and buying one of those houses and going through with that deal. And, you know, but then we also have to remember, those people have to understand when they're called back to work, don't think that the unemployment is forever, because it's not. And so anyhow, sorry I got off that, but theater, it's on a hold button right now. We know what we would do if we could do it, but we also know that we're a very rare bird in the overall scope. And thank God that's not my main business. Thank you very much, God, because I wouldn't want to be in the theater business right now for a living. And if I was, I'd be a really, really skinny guy. Be able to eat.
That's funny. Hey, Michael, I was just going to follow up and ask you, you know, one of the big things, once the doors open, all your tenants, you know, whether the doors are, once they're open, you know, the customers have to come. There needs to be confidence from customers. Do you view, you know, is your role helping them do that in some way, or are you leaving it to your retailers just to come up with their own potentially innovative ways or not to regain consumer confidence, get people in the doors?
So the one thing that I can say is, as far as they're taking the safety precautions that are recommended by doctors and recommended by the state and by the federal government, that I can't do for them. And I don't pretend to know, to be a medical expert, that I'm not. But do I understand what it takes for them to try to regain confidence? Well, first of all, a good percentage of the tenants that I deal with, those tenants are service-oriented businesses. And one of the things that I worked really hard on for the last decade, meaning since 2009, I worked to change the majority of my centers over to centers that were Amazon resistant and internet resistant. They were service oriented, gyms, bars, restaurants, service businesses. Well, whoever thought I prepared for a recession, and I was completely ready, although I didn't think it was coming this year, by the way. But did I think we were going to see a pandemic? No, nobody that I know thought that was coming. And if they did, then they should have been nice enough to share it with the rest of the world so we could get ready. But in answer to your question, we're planning, we'll probably do, now from a advertising, public relations standpoint, we'll probably be out there pushing for our tenants. Again, I can't do anything about how they are, other than remind them, be careful and be safe. And we don't want to see a reverse of how far we've already come to a point where we're able to reopen again. So I'm going to continue to remind them to stay safe and make sure that they do whatever they can so that we don't get another spike. But again, we have to have people in other places. For example, if you've got 25 people on a bus and they're all sitting next to each other and nobody's enforcing, or on a train and nobody's enforcing it, well, then how are we going to be able to enforce it? And we'll just keep spreading this thing. And I truly believe that's what happened in New York, New Jersey. I think that's what happened in Washington. And so we need to be really careful. We can only do so much. And, it's like my team at my office. I have the most incredible team of people at my office. We have worked straight through this thing 5, 6, 7 days a week, and they've come in, and sometimes at nights, and we just keep working. And yet I can't say for sure, and that's what I tell them. I can't tell them for sure where each one of them have been when they're not here at the office. I can tell you that we separated everybody pretty much. And luckily, Jordan, as you know, we've got a real big office. I think we have about 1,000 square feet per person. So we have plenty of room to spread out in distance. But we hired somebody to do nothing. But in the very beginning of this, we hired somebody to do nothing but keep the common area surfaces clean the doorknobs, clean the restrooms on a regular basis. Because the one thing that I didn't want and that we can't afford for one of our valuable team members to get sick. And luckily, and hopefully, because they're all trying to be as careful as they can, then they haven't. So I think that I'm going to do everything I can to help. We'll take out ads in local papers. I know you're all thinking, who reads the paper, but I still do. And so we're going to do what it takes, and we'll try to make sure that people understand that business is open again. I think the governor will do a phenomenal job because he's just that kind of guy, and he's got a retail mind. But I do want to say this, because in case I don't get asked, I do want to say, I think that tenants have to realize this isn't a get out of jail card. This isn't the governor's orders and things. It wasn't meant to say you don't have to pay your rent. It was meant to say landlords, work with your tenants when and if you can. But it's not meant to say, tenant, if you were behind in 2019, or if you were behind in February of this year before anybody had a problem, this isn't meant for you. Unfortunately, you may have been a bad business person. Just like when I started talking earlier and I mentioned that Neiman Marcus has and again, I don't know this for a fact, I only know what I read in the newspaper, $5 billion plus of debt. So if somebody's a bad business person, I can't fix that, but we're sure gonna try to help every one of the good ones. And I can tell you right now, 90-something% of our tenants, I'm gonna tell you, are good people, really good people, and they're hardworking people. And we're gonna do what we can to try to help them to rebrand and do what they need to do.
Let me ask Alan. I know you talked, and we have time for a few more questions. I'll be quick. You talked, about what you're doing to get your customers comfortable and some innovative stuff. You're obviously you're the boss. You talked about maybe there's 10% of the folks coming to work. What do you tell your employees? Are you trying to get them back to the office? Are you doing things to make them more comfortable? How is that interaction going?
That's a great question. In fact, what we're hoping to be able to do, and we're going through that process right now, we're looking at it and realizing that, for example, our field associates, we want them to work from the field first and foremost. And in fact, we're going to do things with video and video conferencing and not have our field associates come into the office, because we found that they're actually more productive because they leave their home and they go to the field instead of coming into the office and wasting half of a day. So from a field standpoint, they're the most excited of anybody that we have working for us because they're more productive today. We're going to set it up, and we're talking about how we can have some associates come in maybe a couple days early in the week and a couple other associates come in later in the week. We will have a situation where far, far less associates will work from the office, because we've found that the associates can be responsible, and they are, and they're making it happen by being at home and doing it that way. So
is that forever? Or just for now?
We intend for it to continue that way. Yeah.
Very cool. Okay, let's go around the horn with 1 minute of where's the opportunity here. And we can start with Michael, and then don't anybody leave because we've got DJ Peabody here waiting for a little surprise right at 1 o'clock. Go ahead, Michael. Opportunity. Where do you see the opportunity?
So the opportunity that I see that I'm most concerned about is being able to help the tenants that I have make it through a difficult time. Is there going to be opportunity to make money in a market like this? Sure. I mean, you know, there's going to be people that unfortunately are undercapitalized or they're over leveraged, and there's going to be a lot of opportunity in that regard. You know, that's really what I think is.
Thank you. Alan, opportunity.
I think there's going to be transactions that are going to fall apart, that those that are better capitalized are going to be able to take advantage of. That always happens during a downturn, where those that maybe were too aggressive in tying up too much property or pursuing more property than maybe they could handle if there was any kind of a downturn at all, you know, not able to perform. So we're a little better capitalized maybe than some others. So there's going to be some opportunities there.
Dr. Moran, it's a peculiar question from an infectious disease perspective, but is there something about this that's going to be helpful to our society?
I think so. First of all, this is here to stay. To the comments of other opponents, this is we're going to be in some degree of social distancing and being more careful for at least a couple of years. And I think the most important intervention that will end this pandemic for good will probably be a vaccine, and that will take a good 18 to 24 months. Having said that, we will learn a new way to live. Learn new ways to do personal hygiene and to act as a community, and then learn new ways to do business because the safety is a completely different concept now than it was 3 months ago.
And that's good. Cameron, any opportunity?
Yeah, I think it's, you know, thinking about the people you serve, whether those are your employees, you know, your buyers, your tenants, you know, what are their unmet needs? And the opportunity is, you know, we've got a time maybe where if there's a lull in your business, you know, take the time to rethink how you do business and, you know, find the unmet needs and you'll be successful as you can meet those.
Thank you. Court, maybe you can answer the, what do you miss the most right now? What do you miss the least?
Oh, wow. After 8 weeks of answering this, I got to come up with a new one today. No, I'm missing the office. I think I'm ready to go back for more than once a week kind of thing.
All right, Michael, Alan, let's hear your miss the most, miss the least, and then we're gonna have Mr. Peabody do some inspirational music. Michael, yeah, Alan.
I'll go. Jordan, I'm maybe a little different than some people, but I've worked out for 40 years, 3 times a week my entire life. And I can't tell you how much I look forward to being able to go to a gym and work out, doing push-ups and sit-ups for my routine. That's really getting old. And I'm looking very forward to being able to go back to the gym and being able to work out. So that, and yeah, I'd like to eat a little differently than I am now too.
Fair, very fair. Michael, what do you got?
So, you know, I miss the in-person meetings. You know, sometimes they're really good, sometimes they're really bad, but I miss, we don't have a lot of visitors to our office anymore. And mainly that's out of respect for my associates and my team. So I really miss that interaction. I'm getting really tired of having to use the telephone so much. And believe it or not, for leasing, I actually get a chance now. I'm out, not that there's that many calls, but when we get them, and by the way, we're getting a lot more this week. When we get them, I go out with my son, Bob, and we show space ourselves. But, you know, we don't shake hands. We don't even elbow. Our new thing, and I'm going to end everything I have to say with, our new thing looks just like this when we greet people and when we leave.
Amen. That's great. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Dr. Moran. Thank you, Cameron and Court. Mr. Peabody, let's hear it. Wafa, let him get the speaker on there. Thank you.
Michael, this is the part where you dance.
Michael is dancing.
Thanks, Jordan.
Thank you.
Well, everybody. God bless.
Thanks, everyone.
Already past my mind, but feeling at night is to sing about you. Know it feels good to be alive. I was alive and I waited. I was alive and I waited. Oh, right here, right now. And there's no other place I wanna be. Right here, right now. Watching the world wake up from history. I saw the decadence between the world